for governor. And you haven't seen a lot of my commercials. You may have seen a few because we aren't funded like the people who are bought and paid for, the Republicans and Democrats. They all have somebody that they owe, and we don't. And I didn't realize this was two different classes, so I guess I'm going to cover some of the same information again.
They're fine with that.
Does anybody here know what a libertarian is? Anybody in this group? Oh, yeah, yes, sir.
We say just someone who advocates for minimal government, obviously staying out of any private issues, and also privatizing certain financial aspects, as well as also decreased foreign trade or foreign relations, I guess.
Well, yeah, exactly. We believe in the rights of the individual, and that's critical to understand. There's a big difference between this. Some people think they get rights from our Constitution. You don't get any rights from your Constitution. Your Constitution is just a piece of paper that says you've got these rights. Those rights existed long before the Constitution ever came into being. So I'll give you a little bit of background of this. I didn't realize these were two different classes, so I feel like I'm repeating myself.
No, they're fine with that.
Okay, to some degree, libertarianism is a philosophy, and it is the oldest political philosophy on this continent. Many people don't know, because a lot of the media, they don't want you to know about libertarians. That's why you'll see that I'm not in a couple of the debates. And that's what they don't like, because they think if they hide a candidate from you, that you won't give them any consideration, that you'll take their word for it to say this candidate doesn't have anything good in store for you. That's a manipulation, and that's, I think, a terrible lack of character for the candidates who would show up in an exclusionary debate, because it cheats the audience out of seeing all of their choices, because we are going to be on the ballot. That's the funny part. And they just want to act like we're not there. So that's terribly important. But getting back to what a libertarian is, it's a philosophy of individual freedoms and individual rights. We think that every human being inherently possesses, most importantly of all, an absolute right to be left absolutely alone. It's pretty simple, isn't it? By your government and by other people. We think that you belong to yourself. You own yourself, your body. So if we gave a little bit of a history of the libertarian philosophy in this country, the libertarians wrote the Constitution, or the biggest part of it, except for the 5/8 of a man thing. We have difficulty that screams against those principles in the real founding document of this country, which was called the Declaration of Independence. We actually believe in those principles, that all people are created equal. And equal means nobody else has the right to tell you what to do. Nobody. Isn't that fun? It's important to know that you get to run your own life. Now, during the course of civilization, what we've seen is that a lot of people want to rely on someone else for their responsibilities. Government. They want government to come to take care of you. They want government to provide everything for you. And that's unfortunate, because what prospered this country, what made it the greatest nation on earth, was actually non-government involvement. It was the individuals who took the initiative that gave us the industrial age, that gave us the whole modern age. And now government politicians try to take over. For instance, in my race, we've got two characters in particular. One's a Republican. He ran an ice cream shop. Yay. Big business. Except that the problem is that government runs exactly the opposite of a business. That's the worst kind of experience you would want in the governor's office. And the other one is just, all he says is, I'm going to give more money to education. And that sounds nice. It sounds like you're being generous. But no, he's actually buying unions. He's buying a voting bloc. He's buying the people who provide the textbooks support. That's where they get all this money to put into these campaigns. And as I was mentioning in the last hour, each of the two big candidates are, I don't even want to say big, because I think they're kind of small. These people show up at exclusionary debates. They want to see if they can get some kind of sneaky advantage for votes by not having the competition there. In fact, when we're on stage together, the interesting thing is my numbers go up and their numbers go down. That's why they don't want you to be on stage with them. And that's why they iced me out of 3 different debates. Now, we did have 4 where the people holding the debates had enough character to say it doesn't happen unless they're all there. That's honesty. And that's fun, for me especially. Because I've seen these guys cancel events, and I expect them to cancel our last event next week. Because we're all 4 going to be there. That's what you see. It's cowardice. And you see commercials on TV. Have you seen the commercials? Do you think that the candidates have anything at all to do with those commercials? They don't. They don't. Those are written by special agencies that use focus groups. These are groups of people that come and say, this will be accepted by the public. And they test words. They test phrases. Every little thing. They test images to see what will motivate you to like this candidate. They have nothing to do with the candidate at all. It's a sales pitch. That's all it is. And you should, as critical thinkers, be able to distinguish the truth from the non-truth. And there's a lot of non-truth when you get to politics, because it never is what it says it is. When somebody says they're doing something for the children, it never is. For instance, the education guy. He was with the colleges, the Board of Regents, and he lobbied for major taxpayer dollars to go into the colleges, and he got it. At the same time, tuitions for the students doubled. Wow. All that money he got trapped in the administration and the bureaucracy, never made it to the students. Isn't that sad? And the other one, the ice cream guy, he's trying to buy the governor's race. That's sad. Of course, I have fun with this because I refuse to pander to any special interest. We don't pander to anybody. Nobody gets nothing special from a libertarian. The one thing that I get to promise people is absolutely nothing. And that should give you the confidence to know that nobody else is getting any either. Because we're the ones who want to eliminate, for instance, something called the income tax. And each of you will become intimately aware of the income tax as you enter the workforce. And just take a look at your paycheck. You just take a look at your paycheck after that and say, why are these people stealing from me? In the last hour, we had a gal who got it right. I was so impressed because I asked a question. If somebody says that they want 100% of what you earn, what do we call that? Anyone? Slavery, of course. And the question becomes, at what point is it not slavery? It's a legitimate question. If they take 90% of everything that you earn, are you still a slave? Yes, of course you are. Because theft is still theft, even by government. Even if they come with a gun and say it's for the children, it's still theft. A 3rd grader can tell you that. Well, adults don't think as clearly as 3rd graders in many cases. And frankly, they're not entirely honest with the public. Now, you've heard it. You've seen it in the newspapers. I'm assuming some of you have read a newspaper here or there, and you've seen what's going on. And one day you hear you got to be afraid of this thing, whether it's the swine flu, the bird flu, and now we got Ebola. There's a good one. These things, they use them to manipulate people. That's what they're for. That's what politicians use them for. And how do they use them? They say, hey, we got this big threat out there. We got these terrorizers over there who want to come kill us all the time. Which is silly. Because I can tell you, after I graduated college, I thumbed my way all over Northern Africa and Europe and the Mideast. Never a single problem. Had my Levi jacket, my big American flag. I was so well accepted, especially in the Mideast. And you go, wait a minute, they want to kill us for our freedom. No, no. Let me tell you something about a college kid with long hair and just hanging out generally in a marketplace in Baghdad, for instance, one day. And I was just having some of their horrendous coffee. It was terrible. But about 150 of these guys in their little dresses showed up. And they wanted to ask me about this mythical place that they called America. They wanted to know about a place where people could be free as individuals and didn't live under a constant threat. And so they would invite me home. In fact, in the Mideast, I was there with Catholics, with Jews, with Christians, with Muslims of all shades and colors. And there wasn't a problem. So why is there a problem now? Well, I would submit the problem now in the Mideast is because we're out there killing their family and friends. My specialty was the Soviet Union. At that time, the Soviet Union was in Afghanistan trying to invade. And we were funding people like Osama bin Laden. When I say we, our government, our CIA, was funding their efforts because they were doing the same things to the Soviets in their invasion and occupation that they're doing to us, our troops, right now. Now, a lot of people say, well, we got to stay over there and kill them. Got to go kill them all. Got to kill them. Because they'll follow us home. And they'll kill us here. Well, let me submit, when the Soviet Union went broke because they were there, I mean, Afghanistan has historically for 1,500 years been the place that empires go to die. Everybody from Hannibal and his elephants. On down the line, there's been 20 different instances where people have tried to take them over and the big guy lost every time. Well, when the Soviets pulled out, terrorism didn't follow them. They just wanted them to stop killing their friends, their family, and their neighbors. That's what they want of us, too. I would submit if we got out of there, they'd have to spend so much time trying to replace and repair what we've already destroyed that they won't even know we're over here. So don't fall for that. They're coming to get us. The terrorizers behind every bush, because it's nonsense. They don't hate us for our freedom. Human beings don't hate other people because they're free. And I hope that you're critically aware enough to see through the BS that you get. So, I mean, you're going to face some issues. As young people, I would be excited if I were you, but I'd also be a little bit nervous. Because you're going to face some of the problems that we leave behind. Big problems, economic problems, military problems, trade problems. Now, as a libertarian, we believe that you own yourself. That is the basic fundamental premise of libertarianism. That each and every individual inherently has an inherent, absolute right to be left absolutely alone. By everybody. If you want to withdraw from society, you have that right. Nobody can say, hey, you owe us taxes. Nobody can say, hey, you got to have taxes on your property. Well, see, to a libertarian, that doesn't make any sense at all. Because those other people, a group of people getting together, and this is essentially what happened, got together, a whole big bunch of people, and they said, we're government. And you're now our subject. Well, for a libertarian, they go, no, it doesn't work that way. You guys can't, there's no such thing as group rights. There are only individual rights. You, as an individual. You can't get together. It's sort of like charity. These people who want to rely upon government to give to charitable causes because it'll make them a good Christian or a good whatever. No, it doesn't. You think God says, hey, oh, wow, you paid taxes. All right, come on in. It doesn't happen that way. This is a total anomaly, and your generation, I think, is going to be responsible for changing what my generation has screwed up so horribly. I am so embarrassed for my generation, it's not even funny. Because you've heard all of your lives how you're going to be paying for what we're spending now for the rest of your entire lives. And if we let it play out, that's exactly what will happen. So that when you grow up, you're going to have to pay for my old age before you can pay for your own families. As a libertarian, we don't think that's fair. We think you ought to tell you ought to tell us, my generation, when we come and say we want 75 or 80% of everything that you earn, you tell us just to bug off, because that's what we deserve. We haven't prepared. Don't fall into the trap to think you can keep it going, because economically, we are literally in the worst economic depression in this country's history. We have beaten out the 1929 debacle. And it's playing out the same way. My grandfather used to tell me stories about the 1929 depression. Now, they were farmers and they were self-sufficient. So he used to say, we didn't even know there was a depression. Because they took care of themselves. They raised their own food. They took care of themselves. But they hired a lot of other people. They actually hired people because of the depression who were out of work. And that's kind of interesting that you think, wow, somebody was exempt. Yeah, the people who took care of themselves. That's what libertarians want you to do. Take care of yourselves. Provide for yourself. Look out for yourself. That doesn't mean to the exclusion of society. Of course, because we all band together as a community voluntarily. That would be the way to go. Because it works to our advantage to cooperate and put together schools and put together different things, ideas and the roads, of course, that everybody likes to bring up, which I think is really fascinating. I hope that your generation will respond by being able to make those decisions of saying, well, gee, I could get a little extra if I just pitch in with the bad guys, but be willing to forego that in order to do the right thing. That's what libertarians were all about. And as I mentioned before, we're kind of the hobbits of the political world. And we like that. Because the hobbits, you know, and I don't mean to repeat for the people who were here earlier, but the hobbits, of course, were little critters from the Shire, peaceful people, left everybody's alone, everybody's good, until they saw the encroachment of evil across the entire world. And they realized that when the evil finally got to the Shire, it wasn't going to go around them. That in order for any one person to be free, literally every person has to be free. That's why it's important that I, as a libertarian, have to stick up for rights that people have that I don't agree with. I have to defend people's rights above my own wants. And that's the hard thing. But it's a great challenge for a libertarian because we get to do what no other politician will do. We promise you, we will protect your rights. You as an individual are far more important to us than any agency of government. Government is just a servant. And that's all it's supposed to be. It's not your mommy. It's not a place to go for advice, unless you want really bad advice, because we can see how they run the economics. Now, we've seen that because politicians don't know anything about running your life. I don't know how to run your life at all. But I trust you to figure it out without harming another person, their property, or their rights. We think it's really important that you become aware that other people have rights, and just because you can doesn't mean you should. Whether it's because you have the force of guns or whatever behind you, or just because you want something selfishly. That's just it. Income tax, we talked about that last time. We want to eliminate the income tax so that when you earn $1, you get $1. When you enter the workforce, you're going to be shocked, because when you earn $1 and they throw a couple pennies in your hand is all you get for that $1. Because the rest has been taken by government because people want government to provide all kinds of stuff. Now most of that money, about 86% by most estimates, is completely fraud. It's going to people who are just picking up your money for nothing. Just picking it up. They're stealing because that's what the political structure allows. In my current race, we have two candidates who are spending $15 million each for a job that pays less than $100,000 a year. That's 150 years worth of salary. Now, do you not think somebody wants to get that money back? Let me tell you, they do. And they want it from you as a taxpayer. That's where they're going to get it back, from contracts from the state, or by the award of monopolies so that nobody can compete with you in your business. That's all politicians do. I mean, they divide us up as people. We've got to start thinking as Americans or even as Arizonans before we think of any other distinguishing feature, whether it's religion or color or ancestry or background or anything else. We have got to be able to look above that and see every individual as an absolute equal. Here's what politicians do. It's the bread and butter. Dividing us up into groups, and then pitting those groups against each other and offering to referee. Sweet job if you can get it, isn't it? You create a problem and then you promise to fix it, because that's what politicians are doing today. We see it on the border. We see it huge on the border. I'm a libertarian. I believe in the free flow of labor. Let everybody come on in and be peaceful if you're not a threat, either by contagion of disease or by your background, a history of violence. Come on in and welcome to this great place. It's the most unique nation on earth ever invented, America. Well, oddly enough, I'm in the odd position of having the only plan that literally will shut down all illegal crossing of our border. And I can do it absolutely, and do it in 6 months for about 1/10 of what anybody else says they can with these walls and all this other nonsense, using a technology that has absolutely performed for over 50 years without penetration. There's no doubt about it. Now, my motivation, people say, why would a libertarian want to close off the border? Well, here's why. Because over 260 people are found dead in our deserts right here in Arizona every year trying to find America. It's unconscionable. So to me, it's a matter of conscience. To them, it's a mere inconvenience. That's the difference between a libertarian and a Republican, Democrat, socialist, whatever. Because they all look alike to us. They're all the same. It's just a matter of what we've discussed before is percentages and degrees. You know, how much of your money are they going to take? How far into your private life are their regulations going to go? How tightly will they control what you can and cannot do? It's important. Now, I do want to make sure this time that we have some questions, because you missed the good stuff, folks, if you weren't here for the first part. But, I'm kidding. But I do want to get to questions, because you have one in the back, and ma'am, we'll get to you in just a moment.
If your opponents are both backed by $15 million of dark money, or if they're backed by dark money and they're constantly testing out focus groups and making commercials, how do you expect to win? How do you expect to get your message to the large amount of people in this state?
Well, the way we are. I'm here today. I'm visiting you. You're the next generation. We're planting seeds, trying to get you to think, so that as you go through life, you'll start seeing, you'll come back and get, you know what that wacko said, it kind of makes some sense now. And that's what I've heard so many times, and it's exciting this time, because a lot of the people that I spoke with last time around, 4 years ago, now are voting, and they're so excited to vote not Republican or Democrat. Because the Republican Democrats, I was on the inside of Washington, and the Republican Democrats work together, whether you like it or not. Fox and CNN, if you don't think they're working together, you're kidding yourself. They just take turns who gets kicked this time based upon how many of their candidates are not running this time. So if the candidate isn't running, it's okay for them to take a shot if you're a Democrat, and you let the Republican get the point this time. But you're going to switch it next time, and that's exactly how it goes. It's a pathetic game to manipulate the population. But our job is to plant ideas that are more powerful than the fraud that you see on TV. That's the only thing we can do. We're not going to beat them dollar for dollar, because the bad guys got a bunch of money. And the good guys, whereas we do have a lot of philanthropists and stuff, the bad guys have more money. And that's it. So we just have to get out there and talk to people and make better sense of ideas that are irrefutable. That's our job, is putting our arguments out there. Their job is to keep our arguments out of your view by keeping us out of debates and all that silly little grade school stuff. I hope that's answered it. We just have to keep going. It's like them hobbits. You know, we want to get the ring of power. We're after it. We'll risk life and limb, and we'll put it all on the line for it, because we want everybody to be free. But we do not want that ring of power. We want to throw it into the depths of Mordor. We want to destroy it so that no one has it. That's where we're at. Well, Tolkien was a big-time libertarian. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, without income tax, how would you keep like any corporation from becoming like a behemoth of capitalist exploitation, or like keep any like government programs running that are already underfunded, like with taxes? Well, that's interesting that you'd say that. That's a unique perspective, because you're hearkening back to what they used to call the robber barons, the companies that were out of control and they just ran it. We do agree that there should be the antitrust laws, which do not allow any company or industry to monopolize, or any company to monopolize an industry. That's critical, because that can happen. But in a truly capitalist free market society, if we were back at that, and that is what grew this country until some of the bad guys and bad influences came into it, you always have competition. So if the bad guys take a profit, the only reason they want a monopoly is so they can raise their prices, get more money from you, right? So we allow room for the little guy to come and compete who's willing to take less profit, and that keeps a turnover, a dynamic in the marketplace that doesn't allow monopolies actually to exist. However, most modern libertarians would say, yeah, we got to have some antitrust laws just to make sure, just to have them laying in the wings. But the actual marketplace itself won't allow for any kind of dominance. We saw that, we're seeing it now, obviously, in the computer industry, whereas at some point, Bill Gates locked it up. Well, he was the only one. Well, now you can pretty much get a computer from everybody.
Everybody's got a computer. And that's how the market works, because that has been one of the few areas that hasn't been overly regulated, was the advent of computer sciences and computer technologies. And I think that's really important. But it's not a big fear. But you were talking about how do we pay for all the stuff? Well, first off, we make sure we're not doing a lot of the stuff, because we only want to do what is in our constitutional charter. There are 18 powers enumerated, for instance, for the federal government to perform. It's now estimated it's in over 1,100. So we want to get rid of them down to those 18. It's going to guard the borders, tote the mails, protect us on the street, and pretty much get out of everything else. That's what government should be doing, because government's just a group of people. And if we really need a government, because people are so bad that they can't rule themselves, who's going to be in it? Are these people made, as Bastiat had said, of a finer clay than other people? The people running it are also corrupt, and that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing the kind of corruption they had in the Soviet Union right here in America. And if you had had the privilege of growing up when I did, when America still was the white hat people, we were the good guys. We were going to ride to the help of everyone. Well, nowadays, if you go overseas, we are the evil empire. That's how they view you. And I'm sure none of you want to go attacking other countries, do you? I mean, I don't. But there is no reason to. And I think it's important. That's how human interaction works, is by respecting the other person. I hope I've answered your question. Yes, sir.
So this is kind of just I'm asking, like, what are the parties using this? So if an economic interest in the United States is threatened overseas, what, in terms of defense, would you do to try and make sure that that interest is kept secure?
Well, it depends on, that's been one of the great fallacies. They say we have economic interests overseas. What we really have is huge corporations that have economic interests overseas. We don't have any economic interests overseas, or else we'll simply switch markets. We'll go to somebody else overseas. So that there is a competitive worldwide market. That's been used as a political ploy, like oil, for instance. And that's what really messed us up, why we became the hated enemy in the Mideast. You went in the Mideast and you're American, you shut up, keep your head down, because somebody's going to shoot you. That's because of something someone else did, because we've pillaged them and we've utilized the oil. We thought it was an economic interest over there, but there are so many alternatives to oil, it's not even funny. But that was a manipulation to make the population think that we had an economic interest in what they produce. And that's not true at all. For instance, back in 1904, Henry Ford, everybody's heard of Henry Ford, right? Henry Ford had an automobile he made out of something called hemp. It's a cousin to the cannabis plant. The hemp is such an incredible natural fiber and an incredible plant. He literally built the cars out of hemp-related plastics and products, almost the entire car, and then ran it on the fuel from the oil, which was 10 times cleaner than crude oil from the ground. Fascinating that 40,000 cars were operating on hemp oil without any outside oil for almost 6 years before the oil interests shut them down. And they do that through politicians saying, making this illegal and that illegal, like you'd see cannabis and stuff. And we talked a little bit, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Is that you just move the market. Don't get caught up in the details, because that's where they want to hang you. It's all a distraction. Look at the fundamentals. Slice it down. Can we do something else? Here in Arizona, one of my projects is a top-to-bottom monorail system. A high-speed monorail, 6 rails, 60 feet up, with a solar roof, which would be the largest solar array in the world. You're talking serious tourist attraction. But think of you seeing the beauty of Arizona unfold before you at high speed, 60 feet up, cruising by the Grand Canyon on some very good stuff. But the idea that you could live in Tucson and work in Flagstaff is exciting. Now, people say, well, you can't spend taxpayer dollars on such big, huge plans. Well, first off, I would remind them that it's already being done in Israel, and I think on the East Coast they're planning one too. So it, first off, is very doable. But mine is all privately funded, where I have a program that I'm offering saying, we own Arizona. That's the name of it. We own Arizona. Whereas individuals will be able to contribute and literally invest in the infra and superstructure of Arizona for a profit, because we believe that people operate to their own best interests. And that's something that's exciting. Nobody wants to talk about, because I want to eliminate the income tax and the private property tax because they're simply theft. There's nothing else they are. People say we want this much money, and we think that's not right. That's not morally right. Now, I plan on replacing that with a flat 9.9% retail transaction tax, which will give us, the scary part is, it would give the legislature 2 to 5 times as much money as they have now. And the last thing you want to do is put money into a politician's hands. I promise you, don't give them money, ever. It's like the phony beggars on the street. You got to be careful. Don't give the phonies money, because you're just throwing money away. But that's really what we run into, is when people talk about our economic interests, it's usually not our economic interests, it's someone else's that a politician is telling you is yours. And I'm here to tell you, you should evaluate that and critically think about it. Is that your interest? Is it worth your blood on their soil to die for? Because that's what politicians are playing with these days. We think it's horrendous. I hope that answers.
Last question.
Yes.
I was on the subject of a monopoly. A true monopoly, as they say, is like one big corporation owning everything. But you can see, like in the poultry industry, as an example, they're owned by these 4 different companies who each own about 25%. But if one company drops the market, drops the supplies, the whole company skyrockets. So they can control the whole, they can control how much you pay for the product, but the government does not consider that a monopoly. How would you?
Well, it obviously it would be a monopoly. A monopoly, and it's been, there are antitrust laws. That's what I was talking about earlier. So the antitrust laws prevent that by not allowing any one company to own more than 1%.